there's something very democratic about it because there have always been, we've had great judges from year one, Martha Stewart, then P. Allen Smith, and then John Danzer, and this year Dominique Browning. And these are professionals in the design world. But as we all know from American Idol and Dancing with the Stars, that the people's vote counts. And so we had 206 ballots counted, and 22 votes were allocated to first place. I am really excited about the people's choice because this isn't a dark horse. This is a front runner from the very beginning. Whose arm, year one, whose arm I had to twist. He wasn't going to participate. And I said, Jeffrey, you have to. Jeffrey Nimmer, rustic planter of East End Garden Design. By the people's choice, please accept a blue ribbon. And now, the founder whose vision LongHouse is, and always will be, Jack Lenore Larson.
Good afternoon, and we're glad you're here, and we're glad it's not raining, and we're pleased to have Dominique Browning with us. I was at a spectacular garden conference last weekend in Rhode Island, and she was the moderator there, where she performed exceedingly well. Please know that Planters On and Off the Ground is not my idea. It came from the Garden Committee. They said planters are becoming ever so much more important. We have them on rooftops. They're international. They can be moved. They can be perennial. And let's do something about it. And we are. And we will continue to. And next year we will vet the entries, and we will have a curator to place them. But we're pleased with the people we have today. We're pleased that you are here. And are there any questions while I'm up here before we go on? If not, I present Dominique Browning. Dominique, in my memory, was editor of House and Garden magazine for many years, and very successfully. And more, our favorite part of the magazine was the end, the garden section. She's written 5 books, a recent big one, and a small one called Slow Love. I recommend you look into them. They're wonderful reads. And so, a beautiful lady, Dominique Browning.
I'm much smaller than everybody here, clearly. Well, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the honor of being a judge. This was a really, really difficult choice, and I can see that I threw everybody a curve, and I'm delighted to have done that. When I saw these pieces, of course, this morning, nobody was in the garden. It was very quiet. And of course, I don't know whether you know, there are never name tags. You don't have any idea who made what. So you really walk in and wander around and judge the pieces on their own without knowing who they're from or anything about their background. And as I walked around and I saw how difficult a choice this was going to be, I began to think about what was moving me emotionally. There were many, many beautiful containers and many beautiful arrangements of plants and color combinations and things like that. And yet then there were a few pieces that felt like they had a story. And the most wonderful gardens that I have ever seen in my life always have a story. They have a wonderful visionary who had a dream for a house and a garden and expressed that. They have a story of a lifetime of collecting plants and planting and tending. Sometimes they have a story of moving and finding home again. But anything that is really moving and beautiful generally has a story to it, and it has personality. It has a uniqueness, a stamp of an individual. Nobody else would make that thing. And as I began to wander around and think about the pieces that no other person could have made, without knowing who they were, I began to focus on the pieces that I really, really was moved by. And so I'll start with the beach fence, which I loved. I thought that was such a creative use of material. I have no idea how it's going to hold up in a heavy rain. And coming from Rhode Island, from the coast of Rhode Island as I do, one wind and that would be that. However, in a protected place, I thought it was charming. I loved the colors. I thought it had a great textural play, and very, very creative and very lovely. And it spoke of a love of the beach to me. And then the next one, Tony Piazza, I thought was so elegant. A very, very beautiful use of metal, and a beautiful use of color, very subtle color, chartreuses and these maroon plants, and the verticals and the horizontals I think worked very well together. And I liked the tension between the two pieces, and in fact we pushed them a little bit closer together so that they would really speak to one another. And I think that's a very, very elegant piece. The rustic planter just blew me away. I loved that one, and so I'm very happy for the people's choice. I loved the brutality of it. I loved the sort of machismo, you know, and those begonias are fantastic. I don't know how they will do in bright sun, but we're not going to worry about that. I think I took 1,000 pictures of it. I love the texture of the bark against the texture of the leaves, and when those plants come in at the top, the paradise, that will give a nice umbrella to those begonias. But I thought that also just had such personality and verve, and I was fascinated by that piece, really terrific. In third place, Tracy Jamar. Am I pronouncing that right? Where are you? There you are. And you look like your planter in this wonderful, you have this wonderful woodland color palette to the way you're dressed, and you're pale, and you look like a creature who hides in dappled shade. I was quite fascinated to see you. I think that piece is very, very elegant. I love how it is its own world into itself, and the planting combinations were beautifully chosen. I can see that there's going to be a progression of blooms and very subtle blooms, and it's a lovely combination of textures, really, because in the garden in shade, what you're really thinking about is the textures of the greens and the mosses and things like that. And very clever. Anybody can take a tree stump and hollow it out. Well, not anybody, but a lot of us could. And you could get somebody to do that for you. So there's an idea there for something you can do yourself. In second place, Kate McCarty. There you are. Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know anybody, so okay. Lovely. I thought that was a terrific use of, looked like found material, these metal cylinders, which actually, if you look at very closely, have beautiful detail on them. There's a kind of button, almost like a gown that gets buttoned up the back in the studs, the rivets up the back of them. The textures were gorgeous, but I loved especially the way you chose the plant material to speak to that. You know, the colors and the silvers and the purples and the sparkling kinds of greens, the combinations of plants were perfect and beautifully, beautifully arranged. So in terms of creating an entire atmosphere with your piece that it worked wonderfully. And my surprise winner for many of you, I know, and I hope that some of you will be able to come back and see this piece in a quiet time, in a quiet atmosphere. That was made by Hope Sandro. Where are you? There you are. Yay. This would, and by the way, also won votes for People's Choice. Actually, everything that I chose was chosen by groups of people too, so I'm not so totally far off the mark from all of you. This piece moved me profoundly, and I found myself circling back to look at it over and over again, and it was a piece that every time I looked at it I thought, there's a real story here. There's something quite profound happening with this. And, you know, this cactus under the bell jar. And then I looked and thought, what is that material that the cactus is in? And it turns out to be broken plastic tubing. And I thought, well, that's very funny. It's interesting. The cactus, which is a prickly pear cactus and has a long botanical history of being manipulated, and is not a plant we see that often anymore. And it's not a plant that you can cuddle up to. It's not particularly beautiful. It's sort of aggressively, I dare you to like me. And there's this broken, what looked like a pool hose, which is also sort of aggressively, I dare you to like me. And then there's this beautiful jar, and I don't know whether you noticed, there's a bumblebee on the cactus, and the base was perfect and beautiful, just a beaten up pieces of wood. And the more I looked at it, the more moved I felt by it, because it seemed to speak of losing a lost world, and it seemed to speak of, you know, time going by and things degrading and our built world kind of decaying, and yet we want to preserve moments of beauty in that. I spend a lot of time now, when I'm not working on Slow Love Life, my blog, I spend a lot of time writing about the environment. And there was something very moving about this piece, about the fragility and yet the endurance of our environment, and how no matter what happens, the plants come back. So I thought it had a great story, a great romance, a mystery, and that was very alluring to me. And it was quite beautiful on its own without knowing anything about it. So just to give you a little bit of what I was thinking when I was going through this show, and it was great fun. Thank you to everybody who made something. It was really, really terrific.
Maybe they've already voted.
No, there's 100 in my pocket. They already...